Hello, namaste, assalamu alaikum, welcome to Good For Us. And today we have a very, very special episode. Not because we're going to talk about Bando Mein Tha Dum, the entire series, but because we've got Nick finally back on Cricket for Us 2.0. How you doing, man?
I am doing fantastic and even better because I'm here on your channel.
That's so kind, so kind. But I don't want to waste anyone's time, people watching, yourself either. So let's get into it. What we're going to do is break this down into four separate videos. There's going to be episodes 1 and 3 on Cricket for Us 2.0 and episodes 2 and 4 on Cricket for Americans. Possibly the best cricket channel in the world. But you can check that out if you want. Afterwards, I will link it up and do all that good stuff. You already know who Nick is, anyways. So, what we'll do is in this video, talk about episode 1, very nicely named Skyfall, and we'll start from the beginning. So let me ask you, Nick, what were your initial thoughts of the first episode, and how do you think they've kind of shown the happenings of this first test?
So, as a fan of Indian cricket, I get the entire cricket community is not a fan of Indian cricket, but for those who are, this is like the modern granddaddy right here. This tour was meant so much to so many different fans that I was super excited for this documentary because this is something that a lot of YouTubers would love to tackle themselves, but with the copyright issues and all this kind of stuff, like they didn't touch with a 10-foot pole. And so I was really, really looking forward. You got Niraj Pandey as a director here. You got Jimmy Shergill as a narrator. They spared no expense, to quote John Hammond from the movies. But I did not like the way it began. It like came out of a cannon. Like there was no like build up. It was just like boom. And I thought like my TV had skipped over like 5 minutes where I missed the introduction. Like it just started and it was so awkward. It was so, I don't want to say amateuristic because that's really, really rude. But I didn't like the way it started off. And I started thinking like, oh man, are they going to mess this up? But it took about 10, 15 minutes, but it started to get better and better. And by the end, I really, really enjoyed the episode. I enjoyed how it ended. For something like this, I want a lot of drama. Okay. That's not for everybody. They want just the sports. I want drama. I want you to make it epic. I want you to build it up. And it took them a while to do that. So, for stylistic point of view, I did not love that. But what I did love, and I think you're going to talk about this too, is who we got to tell us about the story of these matches because they got the best guys to recall events and talk about different things. And for me, that was definitely the highlight, who they brought in and who they interviewed.
Yeah, I would have to second that. And you mentioned, so thank you for setting me up really well. Tim Payne. Tim freaking Payne. The brutal honesty. Yeah, it's just a week in a hotel. It's just a week in a hotel. Why is
He's a
everyone complaining?
savage.
It was amazing because you don't see this side of Tim Payne normally, right? You don't see this side of Ajinkya Rahane. At least I haven't seen this side of Ajinkya Rahane
Right.
either. It was calm, but it was also just brutally honest about everything that happened. And I loved the way they kind of weaved it through the story. I do agree that it was like, oh, you're in the series and that's it. Like that's the beginning.
Boom.
If they set it up a little better, the first 5 minutes might have been, oh, this is what we're going to like. I don't want to compare two cricket related series, but the test is a perfect
Right.
example of how to set up the first test, in my opinion.
I
The
agree.
way you set it up. So for me, that was also an issue. The thing that actually bugged me, and this is not just to badmouth the series, this is actually, we're going to review it, we're going to talk about it in detail. The thing that actually bugged me was when they were showing the wickets for the 36 all out, right? And they showed the wickets, they showed everything, and then they went back through and showed everyone walking off and their scores very, very slowly. And I know what you're saying about making it dramatic. I got it. I got the dramaticism the first time, right? I got the drama the first time. Doing it again just didn't hit me as hard, if you know what I mean. So I was a bit put off by that. However, overall, I love the fact that they got players like Ashwin. Ashwin is a brilliant,
He's
brilliant
amazing. Yeah.
commentator of the sport. He should have a YouTube channel, don't you think, Nick? He should genuinely have a YouTube channel.
he does have a YouTube channel.
Yeah, it's his dissection of certain moments in the match. I want to ask you something because I just thought of this. The way he describes setting up Steve Smith was
Yeah.
one of the best things for me in this episode. He's like, "Oh, I got his number. I trained with our bowling expert. We had a camp the day before the test match, and I thought I'm going to get Steve Smith out. I'm going to make him my bunny. And the way he just set Steve Smith up, because he has so many moving parts, and the way he described his entire thought process was something that got me into the episode. And I think that's the point where I got like, okay, now I'm really interested. Now I'm invested in this particular episode. What were your thoughts?
Yeah, Ashwin not only looked good in front of the camera, but he spoke honestly like a Tim Payne, but he gives you those insights and shows you, if in case you were in any doubt, that they don't just show up and swing the bat and do the best they can, right? They don't just go in the nets for their practice and then they go home and eat whatever. They put a lot of time, and it's no wonder that he is, is he a top 10 now all-time test wickets or something like that?
Yeah.
It's no wonder that he doesn't just show up and he just does it. He's an Indian spinner in Australia. And you've got to have spinners on your team. You're never going to have no spinners or whatever. But you don't think about the spinners unless you're a Nathan Lyon, who's a master at it. At least I don't, taking so many wickets away from the subcontinent. But it's no wonder he's so successful. You mentioned Tim Payne. This guy was awesome. This guy, I mean, at first I felt kind of uneasy for the Indian player. You guys just whine about the hotel. A lot of people have it way worse off. You get a nice hotel. Who cares? And I'm like, man, look at this guy. But he was equally honest on both sides of the spectrum. It wasn't just like an India hate thing at all. He was just, I think that's just who he is. And I think now that he's retired or he's not playing or whatever, he can, he feels like I'm going to be as honest as possible. But Ajinkya Rahane, I think Kohli was calling him Jinx. The other ones were calling him Aju. This guy, I love this guy. I loved him beforehand. I've been very critical of his play the last year and a half. And as I'm watching this, I'm regretting how, hard I was on him for his play. Because for this tour, and we'll get into that with the future episodes that we review, he's like always going to go down for any India fans' hearts as this was an amazing thing, and forever you'll, never have to pay for a drink, so to speak. But I love him as the man. He's so humble, and he's so honest. He's not afraid to sit there and tell you how he felt. And I guess we'll just jump right into it with the biggest blunder on his part, where it, forced me to give him the Rahane can't run, which isn't really fair for his whole career. But the run out for Kohli, I remember watching that live, and I was still young and understanding the game, and I didn't understand that he had caused the run out for Kohli. I was kind of bashing Kohli, and everyone quickly in the live stream, they said, no, that was Rahane's fault. And he admitted that, and you just see the uneasiness of Kohli was cooking. I mean, he was really, really doing Kohli things. Probably could have had a century, who knows. And that blunder, and he was completely honest about it. I thought there was a run, and all of a sudden there wasn't. And, I had to say no, because I think it was the one where Josh Hazelwood was right there. And he's like, oh, crap, he's got the ball. And I love his honesty. But I got to say, I'm a tough critic on Kohli. I am, just because when I came into cricket, so many expectations about how he's the new god of cricket, so to speak. But I loved his reaction, how we got that insight into the locker room after Rahane was dismissed. And he's like, man, I'm so sorry. He apologized to him on the field. He apologized in the locker room. And Kohli could have taken it this way or that way, but he took it as a true leader. And he says, it's okay, man. It happens. We'll get him next time. Don't worry. I really, really appreciated getting that side of Kohli, because we see Kohli, the fierce competitor, the guy that'll chew you out, the guy that likes to talk on the field. And so I think Rahane, being such a humble guy himself, as he's being interviewed, he didn't make it about him and his triumphant things. He just was honest, and he was, sharing of the joy, the blame, or whatever you want to say. I was really impressed with him.
Yeah, because you don't expect that, right? When I saw it, I remember saying, "Oh, Rahane messed up, and Kohli's just gonna hate him for the rest of his life
Oh,
now." Okay,
man.
that's genuinely what I thought, because he was on 73 or 70 something, and he looked set for 100. And when Rahane, the way they described and showed that entire 2.5 minute piece was after the Tim Payne brutal honesty. Obviously, it was one of the best parts of this episode, where he just pushes forward and he's like, I smash it through cover, and I time it a lot better than I thought. So I call for a single. I'm like, no. And then it's straight to Josh Hazelwood, and Kohli's halfway down, because Kohli's like Speedy Gonzalez or something, right? So he's already halfway down, and he goes and he's like, oh man, what did I do? But thankfully they didn't recover, but they kind of got a decent total. And then they came back with the bowling side of things because India with Bumrah, with Shami, these guys were still playing and bowling really, really well under these conditions. The thing I want to actually address is the fact that everyone thought Rishabh Pant scoring 100 in the tour match would get a game, or whatever he scored in the tour match, get a game. And he wasn't selected. Saha was. And I remember backing this Indian decision when it initially happened because I said, yeah, Pant's not as good of a keeper. Saha is so much more experienced. Give Saha a go. Saha did okay in the first innings. I'm not going to doubt that. However, Rishabh Pant would have played it a very different kind of knock. You look at India defending, getting 19 for 6, then eventually 36 all out because there was no one to counterbalance or counterattack from the Indian perspective. Everyone was just petrified about the pink ball moving, right? And I love the fact that Tim Payne, in his heart, knows it's just a ball. It's just a ball. It's just slightly different. And then Ashwin goes into detail about because the lacquer is like this and this and that. I was like, the way they look at the game, the way that Ashwin and Payne look at the game is so drastically different. It's a great watch in that case. So you'd love to see that. I want to mention something else that I realized wasn't in this and has been in other types of sport documentaries or documentary series or docuseries is showing the actual locker room from the inside. You know,
Right.
when they're sitting, it might be at the end of the day, they're just sitting and there's some sort of speech, right? They mentioned at the end of the episode that Kohli gave us a speech about riling us up for the rest of the tour. But they could have shown parts of that. I don't know if there was a camera inside. Maybe there wasn't. Maybe they didn't think this was going to be that type of series, right? That could also be the case. But that's something that I just think we missed just a little bit because I want to know a bit more about how things happen rather than just seeing what I've already seen, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, and I think piggybacking on that, going back to the beginning of the episode of this, short 4-part documentary series, it's almost like a given. And then maybe they didn't want to go the traditional route, but you've got to give like a 2 or 3 minute montage of things leading up to it.
Yeah.
Show the previous Australian tour. Maybe for that show, India's just put a little stat up there of India's failure in Australia previously until they finally won a series, the series before, a few years before, and then going into this one. They talked a little bit about we're coming off the IPL in India. They'd agreed to this, but they were kind of tired. It was the bubble. And it was more of the pandemic a little bit. I just don't understand why not go into that. Why not, have someone narrate like, this is a tour or a test tour that went a certain way that you would not expect with ups and downs. And whatever it is, you got to give me something like that. Going back to the pink ball, I don't know if it was Cummins because he chimed in too, or if it was Tim Payne, but they both admitted, or one of them admitted, maybe because we just win all the pink matches, they're not too worried about it. But like you said, it's just another ball. It's not just another ball. It's a little different. But I like, again, how Ashwin, he seems so strategic. Like, how can I use this new element to my advantage? How can my game and my style and my different approaches for the batters, how can I try to use it? And I feel like that's what he's always doing. And again, another reason why he's probably very, very successful. You also had Pant in there, and it was kind of funny because this first episode, I thought he was wearing like an ascot, like a pink ascot. I'm like, wow, Pant's like really, really formal, but it's just a hoodie. But I really like getting some of his thoughts in there too, because you're right. A lot of people would have thought that with that 100 in the practice match, okay, he's ready to come in here. And I understand supporting the Saha because this guy can play. I'm a big fan of Saha. He definitely can field, but he also can bat. He can score runs. But after knowing the events and how it unfolded, you're just thinking, like, how would you not put Pant in there? So it worked out. Unfortunately for this first match, and we haven't even gotten to the worst part of it, unfortunately, the buttons that Kohli pushed, they just didn't really work out. You had some injuries. You had this or that. Kohli himself played fantastically in that first innings and really helped them get to like what a 200, 220, whatever it was, 230. But unfortunately, when they had their full arsenal, so to speak, the buttons that were pushed just didn't really work out. But then I knew watching this episode, this is going to be the hardest one for me as a fan because I knew the 36 All Out was coming. But let me say this, a huge props to the Australian players that spoke. You had Cummins, you had Tim Payne mostly, you had some journalists or whatever. And the players themselves said, listen, it was great, but we weren't believing the press that was going out there that were the most dominant bowling attack of all time, that, you know, India's garbage. We felt like we had some, I mean, everything was an edge for crying out loud. We felt like we had some lucky breaks here and there, and we had some good catches. I don't know if it was a 36 all out or from jumping ahead to the next episode, but Tim Payne, I think he said like 4 gimmies, just like boom, like right there on the edges. So, I mean, I liked how they were kind of humble about it and like, yeah, it was fantastic. We can't believe we did it, but we weren't ready to believe that we were the greatest all-time bowling attack.
Yeah, 100%. And the best part was where Tim Payne mentions what you just said was that usually it just misses the outside edge, or it edges and it goes between slip and the keeper. But this time it was just in my hands over and over and over again. And as soon as the Kohli wicket fell, that's when they were like, "Yeah, we're pretty much done. We're pretty much won the match now," because of the way the entire process went, and there was no one to counter attack. That's where I'm getting to again. That even though you talk about Rishabh Pant at that time was like his IPL wasn't great. He was a little out of form, but then in the tour game he scored 100. Why not pick him? Right? Saha Pant, that was a discussion for a while, and I was like Saha all the way. I was like Saha. He gets hammered. He drops that really important catch as well. I can't remember who the batsman was, but running back,
so many drop catches. Holy cow!
Right? So many drop catches from the Indian perspective, right? But one thing that just resonated with me, which is something you might not have seen before, is the dialogue that the journalist asked Pat Cummins, which was, I thought there was a gentleman's agreement between bowlers to not bowl bounces, right? And in the old days, right? And Pat Cummins' ruthless response was, "Well, it's not the old days anymore, is it?" And I was like, "Oh man, that's so true. That's why you see this often." But if you go back like 10, 15 years, you won't see many bowlers bowling bounces to other bowlers because they're like, if we come out to bat, they're going to do the same to us.
Exactly. So we have that same ball. We can do that same thing.
Exactly. So let's not do it to each other. But then the way the bounces from Australia, be it Hazelwood, be it Stark, be it Cummins most importantly was just a sight for sore eyes for a Gabe or an Australian supporter. But from an Indian perspective, the ball just seemed to rush onto them as well, didn't it? Throughout the day, when it went from afternoon to evening, and then when it was actual night, the ball did a few things. The ball started to move quite a bit, and that was because it's the pink ball, it's the entire conditions. And to be honest, I was just really, really impressed by how they set it up. That part, I loved the setting up of the entire thing. But I already mentioned my gripe with, the drama is great, but overusing or overdoing it just takes you out of the realism, if you know what I mean. Like, no one wants to see just people walking out, um, all 11 wickets. If they showed like 2 or 3 players, I'd be like, okay, fair enough. Or the big guns, for lack of better terms, of Pujara, Rahane, and Kohli. But they showed every single player and their score walking out when they'd already shown it to us before. And it just seemed like repeating things for the for the length of the episode. And I'm being a bit harsh, but that's because I just saw it today. And it's just fresh in my mind, so maybe that's
why. It's an editing decision that you didn't love, and they could have used those extra 20-25 seconds in a different way.
Yeah.
Exactly. Again, you got a Niraj Pandey, right? I'm not sure if he's the editor. I know he's the director, and I'm not sure how that works in a documentary of something that happened before previously. I'm not sure like how much control he has, what I'm trying to say. But definitely some questionable decisions in this first episode. And I'm not sure if it was like, well, this was the bad match for India. So that's like, I don't know. I'm not exactly sure what the decisions was because I've seen the second one. We'll talk about that at a different time on CFA. But the value is a lot better. The results, in my opinion, is a lot better. The Cummings comment, I'm glad you mentioned that. I have no problem with, let me start with that. If you're a competitor, you're a competitor. I get it. But my only issue is this. If, like you said, if that's your stance, then I don't want to hear any complaining when it's, the roles are reversed, right? And I don't know Pat Cummings too much. I know he's a very honest guy, like the whole Justin Langer situation and him being the captain and everything. There were some things that were kind of made me scratch my head like, oh, wow, he feels that way. Okay. He seems like a guy who's just going to tell you straight up exactly how he feels. So I don't know if he also is that same way when the criticism's towards him. And he's like, yeah, that's fair. It's the game. It's okay. I just don't know, like, if he had gotten the broken arm, if he's like, hey, that's cricket. And he probably would. Because he seems like the kind of guy who's not trying to preserve the old ways. He's doing it his way. Yeah. And I think he's a great test captain early on in his career. I think he's an amazing player. He's the thorn in every opposing batsman's side. He's so good at what he does. Yeah. But that did kind of surprise me. And I'm thinking, okay, that's fine, but just make sure it goes both ways. I really, really liked, again, and I think it was Rahani that said it, I liked how he had admitted, like, you don't hear this from athletes too much. And this is one thing that we got from the players. I don't get a lot in other documentaries about sports. I've seen quite a few of them. Admitting how deflated they felt. Admitting how defeated they felt. He said going back out and having to defend the 70 or 80 runs that we had to when we knew Australia was going to win. We just did 36 all out. Like, having to go out there and field was an embarrassment. And I love that honesty, because that is how it would be. Like, can we just forfeit right now? Can we just stop right now? If it's a game of Monopoly that takes forever, you're going to be like, no, you win. I don't care. You can have my money. And you have kind of that baby approach, but you've got to finish the match. But I love how he admitted that, we didn't want to be out there. It was tough.
Yeah, and that's the nice side of how this documentary has been set up. It's about people talking about their actual experiences. There was a point where Siraj was talking as well. He wasn't even playing the match. He was like, "Oh, I thought I'd go out in the nets or something, and I'll go do a gym session. I'll come back and let's see where the matches are." He's like, "When I came back, they were all out. They were back out again. They were fielding again." So it's just crazy. You mentioned about the injury. So Mohammad Shami got injured. He got hit with a bouncer. That was after Rohit Sharma. He was the actual proper injury within the match, the first injury of this series, right? And Tim Payne. Well, I wasn't happy about him getting injured, but
yes,
it's a perfect.
And he had to correct himself. He's like, I was happy. Well, I was happy about the injury, but he's tough.
Yeah, 100%. And I love that. See, that showed the personality of a lot of the players. Pat Cummins right at the end talking about his finger getting chipped off as well. That was something crazy. I didn't know about, and he's like, that helps me in certain situations. I was like, all right, that's pretty cool. I like that. Those tidbits is exactly why I watch stuff like this.
Yeah, the fact, and I love that story, because it was such a random thing to show at the end. It was so random, that story, but I love I'm showing off my lollipop to my sister, and she slams the door. And he's one of the best bowlers of all time, or not right now, maybe all time at one point, who knows? And he says, like, I can't get the right, what does he say, seam or swing on it, but I can do it my own way. And I'd rather be really good at doing like the junkie way than trying to impersonate the real way. I thought that was cool. At the end of the match, so Australia wins his first match. They were like chasing 40 after the first innings, 36 all out. There's no excuses whatsoever. The bowling was fantastic. The batting was atrocious. It seemed like no one was interested in trying to like slow things. Like, it was really, really bad. And it's interesting too, because it was a carryover on how the day before, I think they had lost like 1 or 2 wickets to end it. They had the night watchman out there. I'm pretty sure this is the same match. They mentioned that. Yeah. And then it carried over, and it was really tough. But it's over. It's an embarrassment. All the tabloids or all the journalists are talking about India's done. They're an embarrassment. They're garbage. Now we're losing Kohli, and he's the only guy that did anything in that match for India. And we don't have Shami, and this or that's going on. And this is my question for you. I thought it was very interesting. I think Shastri, amongst the Indian cricket community, he got a lot of hate in his coaching career when it really wasn't, rightfully due, because he did a lot of great things. One in particular, I don't know if it was all his decision, if it was Rahane too coming in as the captain to replace Kohli, but they said you have 2 options here. And I think it was a journalist that said it. Most coaches, They would have given an extra practice as a punishment and extra, torture net sessions, as he said it. Some coaches, very few of them, they want to go lighthearted. Let's just forget about it. Let's have some fun. Let's do some team building. And they went with that, which obviously was brilliant for this team and what they needed for their psyche. My question to you, Ozjad, is what would you have done in that situation? It's easy to say the lighthearted thing because that's just like the PR thing. And, if that's your answer, that's great. But I think I would have done the movie Miracle again blows the whistle. I think I would have been like, I wouldn't have killed them, but I would have tried to light a fire in them and maybe done the torture net session. I don't know.
That's a tough question. And the best way to answer it, I'd say, is the next episode because they address it right at the start. But basically, everyone concentrate on your own game. However, don't stress about what just happened, right? Yes, you've lost Kohli. Yes, everyone's saying 4-0. Yes, everyone's saying XYZ. Didn't expect this from India. India's lost the plot, blah, 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 blah. But just concentrate on your game because there's a reason why you guys are here. Like I would be the type of coach who would give you a pep talk, but not force you to do any extra work, right? I'd say do what you're doing because this type of stuff, 36 all out, doesn't happen every day, right? So for the type of team they were, I would say some sort of speech and then let them do what they want because they have to forget what's happened. And thankfully that did kind of work for this Indian team, genuinely. And I like your hard-hitting way, though, because it's very American, and that's exactly what most coaches would do, I must say. That's exactly what they do.
And the thought process is not to punish them for what happened, because I agree with you. Like, that's not going to happen too often.
Yeah.
I remember watching it live, and I'm, like, dying here. And people are telling me, Nick, this never happens. Like, they said, you'll watch cricket for another 20 years, it'll never happen again. Yeah. But my thought process would be, obviously what we were doing did not work at all. We were all on a totally different plane. So let's get some extra net sessions in it. And let's make sure that, this or that. I really liked also, it was previous in the episode, who was it? I think it was Washington Sundar, how they used him to kind of fill in for one
Lion.
of the.
Yeah.
For Lion. Yeah. I thought that was really cool because you have that in football. You have that in, is it basketball? But especially football where you have like really speedy guys. You'll get one of your third string guys who's really fast and you try to get used to that or this or that. I thought that was really smart and really cool. And I don't know if it actually helped them out exceptionally in this first match, but I think it did a little bit of help for him, especially in that first innings.
Yeah, 100%. And I haven't got anything else to add personally. Any final thoughts before we go on and end the video, my friend?
So my last thought is this, getting back to the run out, because Rahane didn't straight out say it, but he was alluding to the fact that if I didn't make this blunder, we probably could have a different outcome.
Yeah.
I am going to go out there and say I still think they would have lost this match because that run out, in my opinion, and I could be wrong, maybe he was still feeling it in his particular innings in the second innings. It had not a lot to do with the second innings. You can say psyche, yes. You can say frustration, yes. But you had several wickets after that still had to happen before the second innings.
True.
So I think, could have Kohli gone off for like 150? Maybe, who knows? Or a double ton? Who knows? But would have been really interesting is, let's say they would have added extra 150 runs to their total.
Yeah.
Australia still only has to chase 220. And unless they have a debacle, they're still, because that 36 all out, still probably going to chase it. But again, I still appreciate Rahane taking on all that blame. Mm-hmm. But unfortunately, that just happens. It just, unfortunate.
Yeah, it is. And I did actually like that. He's still thinking about it, which tells you how hard that probably took him at the time. But yeah, definitely. Yeah. I don't give ratings out, so I'm not going to rate this, but I thought it was a pretty solid episode. I had my gripes as well, but it was a very solid episode. As always, Nick, thank you so much. Thank you so much for coming on to Cricket for Us 2.0. For everyone watching, please do check out Cricket for Americans, obviously, boring reviews, the final reaction, but also episode 2 that will be out soon on Cricket for Americans. And like I said, it'll be episode 1 here, episode 2 on CFA, episode 3 here, and then episode 4, the main event, will be on Cricket for Americans. Thank you. And please like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Really appreciate it. Thank you so much. And until next time, take care.